Hi, this is Kerri Hummingbird, and this is Soul Nectar, that show that attempts to tell all the stories from our hearts about how we connected to that which is bigger than us, that essence place, that place of soul connection, of deeper understanding of who we really are, and sharing stories of various individuals who've gotten a hold of that and are acting now in purpose in their lives from that essence place. And I'm delighted today to bring on the show Norma Hollis. Thank you, Norma, so much for joining us today.
Kerri, thank you for having me. What a pleasure to be with your great energy. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful. So, for those of you who may not know Norma, she is a human development specialist and entrepreneur who has consulted at Fortune 500 companies, directed large nonprofits, coached C-suite executives, and written programs for authentic leadership, building dynamic teams, and in crafting engaging corporate cultures. She spent 30 years researching human nature from multiple perspectives to determine what makes people and organizations authentic. What does it really mean to be authentic? And the result of all this research is that she's created an authenticity grid and authenticity assessment, which are tools that she developed and uses to reveal how the 9 dimensions of authenticity impact individuals and organizations. So that's really exciting to me because I'm a huge fan of authenticity.
Yes.
you know, so so we always start these calls with, we want to know their story. We love to hear the story of how you connected to your essence, that which is bigger than you as this lifetime, as Norma Hollis right now. When did you start connecting with this, and tell us a story?
Well, I guess the story started when I was 8. And at that time, I have a poem I've written about it. It starts off, when I was a child at the age of 8, I woke up one morning with a violent earache. To the doctor we rushed with lightning speed to be told my ear would always be. It seems a cold started in my nose, traveled through a weak tube to crust on the earlobe, creating a hole in my middle eardrum as my spiritual journey was then begun. So yeah, and it's 35 lines. That's just the beginning of it. So I thought I would just share
That's
that
beautiful.
because I write poems and I share poems when I speak. So that one just kind of fell right in there.
Yay.
So I woke up and it was July, I think the 4th or the 5th, and I had all these spots on my pillow because my eardrum had erupted because of a cold that could not make it in the right places, so it came out of my ear. So that led to antibiotics, which caused hives, and that led to me going to the hospital to find out what would stop the infection. And they only found one thing to stop the infection, and it had to be applied topically. So the next day I went to the doctor's office. Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. Because they put me in this chair, looked like a dentist chair, and my mother stood on my left side, the nurse at my feet, and the doctor put out this long instrument, looked like a needle, and put cotton on the bottom of it and dipped it into a clear solution. Tilted my head to the side. My mother grabbed my arm, the nurse grabbed my feet, and he slowly inserted this thing into my ear because he had to get the solution on the eardrum to stop the infection.
Yeah.
And it felt like acid on the inside of my head. It was so painful. And I hollered for all the while home. I told my mother to slow down because every bump that she would go on would move the liquid to another space and hurt again. And then I had to go back and do it again and again. And then that was followed by the second year when I was 9 of really deep earaches that they gave me pills, drop shots, everything, and nothing would stop them. So I'm in Buffalo, New York one summer. I get the earache and the doctor can't help me. And in fact, I tell my parents, bring me a woman doctor because these men can't help me.
Pertinent for right now.
I did, yeah. So they brought me a woman doctor and she couldn't stop the pain either. Then my mother says, call Papa. Now Papa is her father and he's a Baptist minister. So I'm wondering, now what can Grandpa do if all these doctors tried everything and they can't do anything? So he takes me into the bedroom and he says to me, he says, lay down. And he says, I can stop your ear from hurting if you would promise to give your life to God. He said, God must have something important for you to do to give you so much pain at a young age. And so I said to him, I probably asked him what's God want me to do? And he said he didn't know. So I said, can I ask God a question? He said, what's that? I said, can I ask God to have the training for what I'm supposed to do by the time I'm 30? So he kind of chuckled and then he said, sure. And he prayed over my ear. I went to sleep. The pain went away. And I never had that intensity of a pain since then. So that was my first curiosity of, I knew of God because we went to church, and my mother was a preacher's kid. So of course we went to church. We were in a different city. I grew up in Detroit, and she was in Buffalo. My grandparents were in Buffalo. But clearly that made a big impression on me, that I had something important to do, because I came to the planet kind of with that knowledge, but unable to sort through it because I talked about it, but my parents had no affinity for that way of thinking. So, and they were very traditional. So they poo-pooed everything I said and made me feel like I was crazy, actually. So that was probably my first inclination. And that level of spirit that I believe I was born with was heightened by that experience. And from there forward, I always had and spoke freely about this God connection that I've always felt that I had. And then when I was 28, it got real serious, because that's when I realized that I needed to go on this journey. And I was married at the time, done everything my parents had said do. You know, I was married, he had a good job, we had a house, I had a good job, and I was miserable. And I didn't know what to do next. I knew I had to leave the marriage, but I didn't know who I was. So that started me on a journey, which I thought would end at 30, but started at about 30, and was a 30-year journey to understand myself and to really get deep. And so in that process, many things happened. I had many mystical experiences over and over again. I ran into people that I've known, I feel, in previous lives. I had some employees that we had this spiritual connection, and spirit kind of talked to us all the time in different ways. My first dozen employees, all names started with the letter L. So it was just so interesting. And we looked up the letter L, and it means throat. And I had a speakers bureau. So it was confirmation for that, you know, in our mind. And that was just one of many, many, many things that occurred. Many of these ladies whose names started with L lived on Linden Street. So it just, it went on and on. And like I said, that was one of many, many experiences that I've had over my lives. Very mystical, very confirmational, to give me confirmation when things weren't going right and it was tough and money wasn't right, or didn't have clarity. Something would happen to just say, I'm still with you, you know, just keep doing what you're doing. It's a slow pace, I know, but it's your pace, and just keep doing it. So in the process, and the beautiful thing about all of it is that in the journey of getting to know myself, I wrote about it, and I kept dissecting myself. And by the time I had my speakers bureau, I had written an entire program about authenticity, or about self-awareness. And a coach later told me that I wrote about was authenticity. And that's how the word stuck and has stayed with me. So having been in the speaking industry, which I got to on a spiritual path anyway, it was clearly this was part of my process to learn what to do with what was given to me. So now I speak about it, coach about it. I apply it to raising authentic children. My first career was early childhood. I apply it to authentic communication, having had a speakers bureau and coaching speakers. And I apply it to authentic leadership, because some of the leaders need some help, need to transform some of these corporations, and they're ready to, but they don't know how. And so I help them to learn how. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, feels to me like authenticity to me feels so much easier once you get on the other side of the fear of being authentic. It's like the fear is a hurdle, because when you're in the fear, you think, oh, no one will like me the way I am, and they're going to judge me, or they're going to say this or that. And I remember how I got to my own path of authenticity was that I got a task from the Great Spirit, from God, that I didn't really want, which was I was supposed to write my story.
Right.
I had to write my story on my journey of healing, started about 6 years ago. I had to start writing my story as authentically as I could, what I really was thinking and believing every day, every week as I was unfolding and healing. I was supposed to write this story. And there were times when I was called to write about things I did not want to write.
Right, right. Well, I had that experience too. But before I turned 50, a few months before 50, every morning in the month of October, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'd wake up and go write your story. If you don't write it down, you're going to keep remembering it. You got to let it go in order to move on. So that's part of the story. Now, when you talked about how we lose our authenticity and getting off paths, I think what happens to so many of us is we get on this path of believing what society tells us. So we believe we're supposed to, or we should have, or we didn't. And normal doesn't mean anything. There's no such thing as normal anymore. Everybody is individual and unique and very specific, and their gifts that they're given, the combination of them is so unique. So stepping into who you are and finding your own path. So when I think people become authentic, one of the first steps is to get off of autopilot and get off of the path you think you should be and look for the one you know you are to be on. There's a big difference between what you think we should and what you know is.
Yeah, I like that you said thinking versus knowing.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about thinking versus knowing.
Well, thinking is a lot in our head and our brain. And while we're taught to believe the brain is the source of knowledge, the heart is a major source of knowledge because the heart has more memory, has more kinds of memory. You know, we're born with a pictorial view of the world. We're born very much in our right brain. If you go back to ancient Egyptians, they didn't have words. They learned and they communicated through pictures. And when we think, we often think in pictures. We don't think words. We don't have words running across our mind. You know, when we're thinking, we have pictures generally in movies and scenes and visions that come across our mind. So that is what's more normal for us. So stepping into that, the visionary part of life is more who we are. That's where the real knowledge comes. So it's thinking from the heart, it's feeling from the heart, it's knowing from the heart. It's like the difference when you say, I've been in many different churches, and in some of them I find they read about God in the Bible, they read about Jesus in the Bible, and through reading about it, you're expected to understand Jesus. Where the difference is, there's a knowing that you have when you know God, when you know that God lives in your heart, when you know you have a personal relationship, when you know you can call upon God at any time, it's like a best friend. And you don't get that just by thinking about it and reading about it. You get that by feeling it. That's a heart experience. So that's the difference between thinking and knowing.
I love that because that's exactly how I was not raised with any religion. My mother grew up in Midwest Texas, Southern Baptist. Her grandma took her to church like 5 days a week kind of thing. So my mother was like, that's enough.
Enough.
And, so with me, she didn't give me any training. And I think part of her reasoning was that she wanted me to be a blank slate, to be really clear, so that I could find my own path, however that might be for me. She never wanted to stand in the way. She never stood in the way of me going to other churches or going to friends with different, that had different religious backgrounds. I visited many different types of institutions. I was curious about it. But for me, like the biggest thing was when I could experience it. And my first time experiencing it, actually really deeply experiencing it, was in my first energy healing, my first shamanic healing, where I was just lying on the floor. My mind was like chitter chattering, at me, like this is BS, blah 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 blah.
Right.
And my, my teacher Gary Starnes was drumming over me. He was drumming and he was listening for spirit. He was listening for the message. He was being an open channel for the message to come through. And then all of a sudden I decided, okay, I'm just going to experience this. Get out of your head, just be. And the minute I decided that, this presence came in over me and I could feel this loving presence fill the room. And I just went, oh my God, like I could feel it.
Yeah.
And then he started healing me and like it was crazy. I was reacting and I was having all these feelings. And that to me was how I found God, because I could feel it. I knew it to be true because I could feel it.
Right.
I needed to feel it. I couldn't get there from rationalizing or thinking about it. I needed to feel it.
Right. It's such a difference when you feel it, when you learn to feel it. And you don't learn that until you kind of let go and you kind of go within. You go you allow your intuition to lead you. You listen to your inner voice. You don't make decisions so much. You listen to your heart when you make a decision. You hear your head speaking, but then you also see how you feel about the decision. And then you can connect more with that inner self that we all have. That's a part of being authentic. That's where authenticity begins, when you can listen to and really be within yourself.
So how do you recommend to people that they listen to their own guidance? Because I know that in some cases, people have really been trained to think that the answer lies with outside of themselves. Like somehow the answer is with this spiritual teacher or this minister or this person outside of me has a better connection than I do. Like I think people have this idea that somebody else has the connection and they have to like go to this person in order to find a connection. Whereas that is not my experience. Like I can go direct, I don't have that block. So
Right.
how do you help somebody who's in that kind of space?
Well, the first thing I tell them is to think about how you answer yourself, which you do every day, when you ask yourself the question, what am I going to eat? Or what am I going to wear today? So unless you're leaving the house naked, you're answering yourself. And unless you're skinny as a rail or no longer walking around, you're answering yourself. So sometimes the answer comes as a thought or a feeling. Sometimes it's a gut feeling. Sometimes it's something in your heart that might flutter. Sometimes it's like rolling through the rushes in your arms. Just try to examine how you get that answer. And that's a clue for how your voice speaks to you. And just zero in on that and begin to focus on that. The second thing that I recommend is you can test spirit. Spirit is like a good friend. Your inner voice is like your best friend that you have. So when something happens and you're not sure about it, you ask for confirmation. This is what I did when I was 8 and after I had gone through this experience with my grandfather. And I had gotten a message from a voice, and it's, where's that voice coming from? Is that, are you the real voice or what? So I said, okay, look. And when it came a few times, I finally said, okay, look, if you're the real voice I should listen to it, then prove it to me. So in the next week, show me somebody with red socks. And then somebody else mentioned the word elephant in the conversation. And then maybe I'll believe you. So sure enough, within the next week, both things happened. And I did it again and again and again, probably, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 times. And eventually the voice said, do you believe me now? So, and so as a result of that, it's like a friendship. It's like the best friend I have. I can call on this friend anytime I want. And now that I know how that friend communicates with me, I know how to get answers from the friend. I write a lot. It's one of the things I wrote about when I was learning myself. And one of the first things I wrote about is how this voice was speaking to me so I could be clear. And what it does when you don't listen, and it has to really get your attention, which it will do in many ways, many times. So listening to that voice is the first step for authenticity. And it's a major step for knowing yourself, self-awareness, and just peace and calm, which is what I think we all need in this crazy world we're living in.
I love that. But I'm getting you saying is that in order to really listen to that voice inside of you, there's some experiments you can run to prove it's true for yourself.
Yes, self-experiments, yes. Nobody has to know but you. They don't have to think you're crazy. You just do it because you want the clarity that you need. And when it works, then you tell your friends.
And for me it's like I went to energy medicine school and they taught us how to use our intuition, because so many of us in this country, in our Western culture, are not accessing our intuition.
Right.
We go at things from the mind and from logic and reason, and we're not really paying attention to the intuition, to the messages that come through all the time that we just ignore.
Right.
Or we got so much mental chatter going on. I always tell people it's kind of like if you've got a rock concert going on in your head, you are not going to hear the whisper of God.
Right.
That is not going to happen.
And so many places in life don't respect it. There's so much in the industrial world and in so many other ways of seeing tangible. There was a time when spirit was very, very strong and very heavy and dominated the world. But now it's less and less when they separate church and state, although church is more head than it is heart in many cases. So we just fall into that trap, and we fall into it. In my research, what I found is that we lose our authenticity beginning in our very, very, very young. So my first degree was early childhood, and I directed preschool programs. And in preschool programs, children run around, they pick what they want to do, dramatic play, music, finger painting, whatever. And when you go to the bathroom, please go, here it is right here. But then kindergarten and first grade, it's like, get in line, fold your arms, raise your hand, hold it, wait. And you're put in these chairs that end up being cubicles people stay in all their lives. So also when they're
sad.
It is bad. And when they're very young, the well-meaning adults in their lives often encourage them not to be themselves. Baby, don't sing so loud. Don't talk so much. You can't make money with painting. We hear these things as children when we're doing what we love to do. And well, I guess I can't be that, or I guess I can't do that. So who am I supposed to be? Where do I fit in the world? And those who are very creative, oftentimes who have the greatest gifts to share with the world, lose them because they get caught up in what they think society is about and requires of them. But that's one reason why I love California and other parts of life that allow you to be creative and are not so stuck in the box of how things are supposed to be. There is no more supposed from my perspective.
Yes, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about how, when you go, yeah, I know that you work with corporations. So you're going into environments where it's already built on the framework of, here's the expected way for you to behave. And here, here's your cubicle and here's what we expect of you. And you have to do it this way and show up at this hour and we're going to track you. And how do you go into those environments and bring intuition? Like, how does that dialogue happen?
Well, it begins with the senior management having an understanding and looking at their management style. Because what's happened a lot in America is that, big business started in the industrial age when we moved from making everything ourselves in our own homes or in our own communities to having assembly lines. And when we had assembly lines, the focus was on how fast can you make the product, make a good product? Can you make it faster? What can we do to cut a second off of the manufacturing time, whatever. And it wasn't so much about who you are. People didn't care who you were, just do the job. And now we're in the information age, which is more about critical thinking. So how can you help solve this problem? What do you bring to the table? What experiences do you have that'll help you solve this problem? And now we're moving into the empowerment age, which is all about what do you bring to the table? What are your gifts? So as we focus more on the gifts that people bring, that helps corporations manage their workplace, work style, workflow, and it helps people feel more, it makes the jobs more meaningful to them. Everyone wants to feel like they're doing something of value and being meaningful and being helpful. When you're able to use your natural gifts in a work environment, you just like being there. People become family. You know their strengths and their vulnerabilities. You can make fun of each other because you accept each other for who you are rather than feel like you're being put down all the time. When I directed some programs earlier, I had this concept. I had people who were very loyal to the company, but were in the wrong job because their gifts were something different. And while my board encouraged me to fire them, I looked more at the idea of where can I move them in the organization where their gifts can be used and they're going to be happier. Even if they make more money, sometimes that's a trade-off to make more money to do what you love doing, because then you don't have the physical stress and other issues that come upon us as humans when we're living in stressful environments. Because if you're not happy, you've got some stress going on, whether you recognize it or not. You might be masking it. You might have been stressful most of your life and not realize it because you really haven't found your authentic self.
So now, how do you help people find their authentic selves? And by the way, before we go into that, I want to say it's a really great message you have, that you can stay in a corporation and be of purpose. So you don't have to, go leap off the cliff like I did and, and go off and do the purpose-filled life. My entire life revolves around my job. You don't have to do that in order to fulfill your purpose. And I love that you touched on that, and I wanted to bring that full circle.
Right.
And
well,
yeah.
Ideally, your purpose is fulfilled at your job. So there's an alignment there. So, but sometimes, companies are just about the bottom line. Well, the bottom line can be reached easier if people feel meaning. There's a lot of literature going on right now about how companies need to have a soul. And companies without a soul are not going to survive in this new environment that we're going into. So that's all a part of it. Yeah.
Companies with soul.
Hey!
I can get behind that. I love that. Oh, okay. Go team. Companies with soul. Okay.
What a concept.
I love that. Okay, so now back to the other question. Tell us about, how do you get people to the place of finding their authenticity and their authentic connection? How do you bring them from the image of perfection, as my mentor likes to call it, into their real truth and accepting themselves for who they are?
Okay. Well, what I've done, when I had my coach, when I was all in my confusion, what do I do with this? What is it? How do I use it? And he told me that what I've done was authenticity. His next suggestion was I should create an assessment, which is what I did. So I have a 9-question assessment that I give when I do live events, and it's, I think, 30 questions when you take it online. And through that assessment, you find out what your authenticity factor is. You get a score that lets you know where you fit in the whole stream of authenticity. But the beauty of the assessment is that there are actually 16 different scores that you can look at. You can look at which of the 9 areas you were the lowest in. And I don't call those weaknesses, I call them vulnerabilities. So for example, if your lowest score is in intuition, which is one of the questions that are on there, then you know you're vulnerable by not listening to your voice. And what you need to work on to be more authentic is to raise your level of intuition. Maybe your lowest score is in legacy, and legacy has to do with your natural gifts and talents. I tell people about 9 different gifts that I call them wisdom gifts we're all born with. And if you're not living within your gifts, and that's your area of vulnerability, then you know that that's your source of stress, unless you are doing something in your life at some point in time to honor what your gifts are that you were given. You also get to know your strengths, and then you get a chance to ask yourself, are you living within your strengths, or how can I maximize my strengths? And then I also show you how to use the grid to as a coaching tool to help you raise your level of understanding so that you can be if one dimension is low, you can work on another dimension to bring it up of these 9 in terms of how the grid is put together. And I know I'm being a little esoteric, but that's the way it works. So when people take the assessment, they'll kind of see what they mean. And if they take part in my program, we'll go even deeper in it. But it relates, and so it's a magical type of grid and assessment that I've developed. It was actually channeled through me over a 30-year period, and then channeled through me how to do the assessment. And then I tested it for about 8 years to see what it was and what it did, and found that it's just phenomenal. And I'm doing it now with authentic leadership groups, with communications, people I speak that are speakers, people that want self-development and improvement, personal leadership, organizational leadership, a number of different ways, because we have both an individual and a corporate perspective with the same basic framework. So once they take the assessment, depending on the environment, I would help them to implement it and apply it within their personal situation. So that's just a tool that I've developed that has programs attached to it that can help people to grow and also to teach it if they would like to.
What do you see are some of the stumbling blocks that people have as they make the choice to open up to authenticity, and then maybe they get some information from you that they need to go in a certain direction, or some things? What is a common, are there common threads? Are there common things that people are facing that you can talk about?
One of the things I would say, one of the primaries, is that authenticity puts purpose over profit.
Yes, it sure does.
And most people put profit first.
Yeah.
And I clearly understand it for people who have families, who have children to feed, who have mortgages. You know, I look at society and how it's designed, and it's designed that as soon as you get an adult, first of all, you've got this drive. I got to have babies. I got to have a house. I got to have a job. I got to have all these things. And next thing you know, by the time you're 30, you've got babies and a mortgage and car notes and debt, and you're stuck. And it's very scary and difficult to step away from that level of responsibility. So it takes an act of God in some cases. In other cases, a great deal of faith and commitment and recognition that, you know, one of the things that I attract are people who want to make a difference in the world. And I think we all can agree at some level that life is not exactly the way we would have designed it. You know, we're fitting into an environment that is not necessarily of our choosing, and not the way in which we would like to structure it. Well, particularly if you have children, then there should be, I would think, that there is an interest in making the world a better place for them, so that them and your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, et cetera, will have a different environment to live in. And it's not going to happen if, as adults and parents, we keep doing the same old thing. Do the same old thing, you're going to get the same old thing. So if you truly have that heart talking to you, if what I'm saying and what Kerri is teaching resonates with you, and you recognize that, you know, if you're a parent, you are in a phenomenal position to make a major change in the world by helping your children be their authentic selves. They, you know, that over 50% of the jobs that our kids will have not even been developed yet. So trying to raise a child by a so-called job doesn't work. Raise a child by their gifts. You have a happy child who will be more productive in life and be able to find a job no matter what. So it's shifting our thinking. It's stepping out of the box and being courageous, recognizing that all the things they say about how societies are supposed to work and what's so-called normal is nothing. If you have watched Wife Swap, I used to hate that name, but when I started watching that show, I began to see all the multitude of ways that families raise their children. And you do not have to step into what is so-called normal, or the way your parents did it, or any way that may be dysfunctional or create dysfunction in your family. You can create your own way of living the world and help your children do the same.
I love that. And, you know, it's also like what I found is that I think a lot of us have this idea that, well, when I get the perfect job offer of my thing that I really want to do, then I'll quit my job I don't like. It's actually the opposite. I realized it. It was like, you have to leap in some ways into the possibility of the thing you would like to manifest for yourself. And maybe it's not there in full manifestation, but you're following like these little breadcrumbs. And so you're taking the first step. And it's like the first step is the commitment. I am so committed to my authentic self and my happiness and my passion in the world and my passion, the thing I love, that I'm going to take this step that is the scariest thing I could possibly do. I'm going to take it with faith. And I'm going to wait for the next step to unfold.
Right.
And that first step's the hardest, because you go from like 100 to like 50. You know? In terms of your money or whatever, you go, your ego gets completely triggered, and you know.
Well, that's where the head comes in. That's where the thinking comes in. Use what you've learned about budgeting, about planning, about strategy, about looking forward, about making a goal and working towards it, and allow your brain and your thinking side to come in from that. And so you know what your passion is. You have a sense what you want to do with it. You've got Google. You can find ways that you can express it. Just do the research. We have a process in my authenticity program that's called Think, Communicate, Do. And essentially what it says is that to get anything done effectively, it's a 3-step process. First, you think about it. That's strategize. That's evaluate. That's research. That's examine. Do whatever you do to get the facts. Get the facts. Then you communicate. Talk to your friends. Talk to your family. Talk to consultants. Talk to coaches. Talk to yourself. Just talk. Talk it out and see how other people feel. Don't necessarily take everything that they say, but do a survey of your people who know you well and examine, go back to the think and communicate. They go together, but think first and communicate. And then you do. So often we step out into action and do without having made a plan, without having to tested the plan. So do all those things first. So set yourself a time frame. Doesn't have to be in the next month to get it done. It can be the next year, the next 2, the next 5 years, when your kid graduates from wherever. But set a plan in action and start putting it in place, because nothing happens overnight on planet Earth. Everything takes time. So give yourself the time to make it happen. And accept the fact that it may mean less money. Everything we're taught early that money is the goal of being a human being. But I suggest you think about the other goals. After a while, you know, when I had some financial challenges, what I realized is that I could live on a lot less money. There's certain things I don't really have to have, I don't have to do. And if I recognize it's going to be temporary, if I use my thinking and I put certain things in place, it is going to just be temporary. And all I have to do is to ride this temporary road, this temporary time frame. And if it's a family that's temporary, give everybody a chore or a responsibility that helps in the growth and the development. And as a family, evaluate it on a regular basis. So it's a group growth and not just everything falls on daddy or everything falls on mommy. Let children understand what it means to live to have a household, to raise a family, that it requires everybody pitches in. And then you're making a difference in the world. You're helping your children with a different perspective, and you're helping yourself in the long run as well.
And I think that, you know, I've got 2 sons that are teenagers now, and I've given them the gift, I believe, of seeing someone go from a job I hated it, you know, technical writing for 20 years. I was free. I was a consultant. In that way, I was free, but I was putting my mind and my attention in something that I really had no passion for at all.
Right.
And plus, look at me. I'm a total extrovert. I love to connect with people. And here I was, like, sitting in my cubicle behind my desk with my computer, you know, like
for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. I was like caging myself.
Yes.
You know, and I'm so much happier now, and they get to witness that. they get to witness all of it. Now, was I making a great salary as a high-tech consultant? Of course I was. Yes. But in my household, it's been really true that following my authenticity and my passion has been a life transformer for my family.
Right.
So, I think that it's a valuable gift we give our kids when we show them through our action
Yes.
how to make life happier for yourself by being authentically who you really are and
Yes.
stepping out and making your whole life demonstrate that.
Yes. Yes. Congratulations. That's wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you.
And so your children are less stressed. They have less
Yes.
challenges. Yes. They're happier. They can study easier. So stress in the family, what parents don't realize sometimes is the stress they feel at work, they bring home.
Mm-hmm.
And they're role models for their children. Children learn how to behave by watching their parents. So if you come home stressed, tired, exhausted, unwilling to communicate, just dealing with stuff from the work, or come home working all the time, that's what your children are going to emulate. So you're not making a difference. You're just keep repeating the same old thing. And the corporations love employees
They
like
love that.
Yeah, they love it because they know if you go, somebody else will come and do the same thing.
Yeah.
So they're not going to look out for you as much as you're going to look out for yourself.
So, well, this is I think this is awesome. I love your work with authenticity. I love that you're bringing it into corporations, encouraging them to change their structures to help people find authentic places for themselves within the corporation.
Yes.
And I'm sure that your work also involves taking people from corporations if they have a corporate job and putting them into a job that maybe is more suitable for them, whether that's working for themselves or working someplace else.
Right. I have coaches that work with people that are in career transition, and I help people become professional speakers. So people who have passion, experience, and expertise that they want to share, especially if they want to make a difference in the world, then that's what I do is help them. One of the things I do is to help them become professional speakers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to give you a chance now to tell us about your special offers for our audience.
Yes, and I do have two special offers. One is to take my authenticity assessment, and there's a link to that. And it's this one is a 30-question assessment, and it will give you the feedback. And then you have an opportunity to have a 30-minute one-on-one coaching session, complimentary, with myself or with Betty Kimbrough, who's my executive coach on my team. So that's number one. And number two, if you really want to go deeper, I have a program that's a 6-month program that is called my Protege program. And through this program, you get 26 audios that come in your email box every I guess once a month. That's 26 weeks. Yeah, once a week. You also get 9 inventories. I call them inspirational inventories. These are based on the 9 dimensions of authenticity, and they're opportunities for you to go deep within yourself and take a journey within yourself by answering and reflecting on a number of different questions in a structured way that help you raise your intuition, improve your lifestyle, know your gifts and talents, all the 9 areas of authenticity. And also included in that are monthly group coaching calls. So you get a chance to answer any questions you may have and get feedback on the calls and listen to other people from around the United States or the world for that matter sometimes, and learn from the questions that they're asking. And also there's some lecture involved, so you're going deeper. And that is normally sold for $547, and I'm offering it to your audience for only $197.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. So, so before we sign off, give us one more, give us a word of encouragement for anyone who's looking to make this transition to go into their authenticity.
Well, one of the things that has made the biggest difference in my life, and it was really hard to do, was to transition from the traditional mindset that I was raised in to the more open, collaborative, not less competitive mindset that is comfortable for me. And it was a journey. I didn't have anyone to teach me how to do it. I did not even know that I needed to do that. I'm so thrilled the way the life is now that coaches exist where they did not when I was a child. I didn't even get the therapy from all that pain as a child, at age 8, because they didn't understand the importance of it. But now that you know that having a coach, having someone to guide you, that there is information, that there are people out there that can help you through that journey. The other side of the box is so phenomenal. And it's my belief also that everybody, even those who can't find their gifts, everyone has a number of gifts within them, and everyone will find passion when they can use their gifts.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what you think about what your gifts are, even if you don't have a clue what they are, they do exist. And I think the kind of life all of us were sent to live and to make way for others to live is a life that's based on who we are, who our creator intended us to be, not just someone who is a robot following the path to a 9-to-5 job every day for a paycheck and going back and doing it again the next day. I don't know about you, Kerri, but I think you're the same as me. Every day you wake up in great anticipation of what's going to happen today.
So
What's
exciting.
going to, what it is exciting. And life can be that way every single day, and it can be that way for your children. So what's the hesitation? Let go of the fear, embrace the opportunity, embrace the optimistic future, not the pessimistic future. And it's optimistic because you can make it happen. All you got to do is do it.
And I think it was Martin Luther King that said, you don't have to see the whole staircase. You just need to see the first step. That's it.
The step.
Just
That's
the
right.
first step.
Yes, yes.
You know, and then somebody else said to me, I can't remember who said it, but he said, everybody has a song in them, and I don't want my song to die with me.
Yes, yeah. Get it out there.
I got to get my song out there so everyone can hear it. We want to hear your song.
Start singing, start dancing. That's right.
We want to hear your song. So bring the song.
The world is waiting.
The world is waiting.
The
You're
world is
important.
waiting.
You're important. You're important.
Yeah. Even your own, if not the whole world, your personal world, the world of your family and your friends, your community.
You're touch one person's life. You're blessed.
That's right. That's right. That's so true.
So I like to end all of our calls with kisses. So I'm going to send out kisses to the audience. You can join me if you like.
Absolutely.
All right, let's send them kisses. Okay, you guys. Love you guys. Sending you blessings. Until next time on Soul Nectar, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Norma, for being with us today.
My pleasure, Kerri. Thank you.
See ya.